Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Adam Shimoni, and I have the pleasure of helping to facilitate today's meeting in these Bicycle Climate Action Team meetings. So welcome, and again, thank you for taking the time to be with us. If you are tuning in virtually, please do feel free to share this live stream and help us build our audience as we get going here. And if you're joining us here in person virtually, thank you for taking the time to join our effort. Let's go ahead and do a really quick round of introductions. Perhaps one. Let's see. Who can think of a good question? Your name, why you're part of this meeting, and I don't know, maybe a really short, quick, funny bicycle or pedestrian related story that you can think of. That's super quick. Nate, thank you for joining us. And yeah, does anyone want to go first?
I'll take a crack at it.
Tyler, please.
My name is Tyler Denham. Flagstaff resident, general rabble rouser. Funny story, I ride my bike to work every day for my own safety because I am a terrible, terrible driver.
Oh no.
Yeah, I just think everyone's better off with me biking around town.
That's great. Thank you for joining us, Rebel Rouser, Tyler. Nate, would you like to go next? Nate, are you able to unmute? I think you are unmuted, but I think you are also, your microphone's not coming through. Okay, we'll come back to Nate. Kathy, do you have a funny story ready?
Not a funny one, but I just retired from the library, and I was biking to work from the east side every day, and I just noticed the disrepair of the paved part, just a little section with the potholes and like an accident waiting to happen. So, but anyway, just thought I'd join and do something.
That's great. And Kathy, what brings you to this group? Why are you choosing to join be here with us?
I joined the larger group, the NASCA, because I'm just concerned about the climate. And now that I'm retired, in fact, that's kind of what I retired for, to do more about it.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you for taking the time to be here with us. Lauren.
All right, so I'm I'm Lauren Chavez Bardini, and general biker. And let's see, the first story that popped in my head. So Nate or Tyler, I think you and I are similar in that we bike every day to work, and it's a lot of fun. And I remember one time I was and we run errands and grocery runs. So I was on my way to Target, and the Jeep ahead of me had like a fanny pack on top, and when they started going, it slid off. And so I was able to pick it up and then just crank it on my bike, and caught them on Milton. And luckily, they were, because what's the saying? Meet you at the next red light. So it took two more lights, but I caught them, and that was a lot of fun. They were pretty stoked, reaching through the window for their bag.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. And I think we just lost Nate. I was going to circle back to Nate, but yeah, thank you for sharing, Lauren. And why do you choose to be with us?
Oh yeah, just ever since I got hit my bike in like 2012, I just delved really deep into bike safety and how to commute safely. And because Flagstaff's like the perfect setup to bike. It's like 10 miles wide at the longest part, right? And it makes me happier when I'm riding instead of driving. So, but I never would have done it if there wasn't the college motivation to save money. So,
Right.
I don't know if we can make it set people up for success to learn how to ride and how enjoyable it is, and that would be really lovely.
Heck yeah, that's great. And folks who are tuning in, feel free to put your name and a funny story that you might have in the comments section, or why you're joining us today. We'd love to hear from you and engage with you throughout this conversation. But my name is Adam, and I'm here because I really care about cycling and that there's safe cycling options for our community and all types of riders and walkers, not just those of us who are comfortable daredeviling our lives on the road, as I did today and most days along Milton and other corridors that are very dangerous to ride along. But a funny story that I can think of, I think just this one time I was on campus as a college student. I was making a turn near a building, and I came a little too close to the edge, to the curb, and I recognized I was going to fall over. So I pushed off the bike like a movie, and jumped off the bike and landed on the grass and kind of stumbled and ran alongside because I was going pretty fast, and it felt like a ninja. And it was just super fun and kind of cool. But just, yeah, that's the story that came to mind. But let's go ahead and jump right into the conversation. We have a couple things that we want to talk about with you all today. One of which is the city's crash data. And this is a really big discussion and a really important conversation. So the city's been collecting crash data for over a decade, and there's some good information that I want us to kind of discuss and talk about. And then the second part of the conversation today is going to be about protected intersections and their design. So we're going to be going through what a protected intersection is. So let's see if I can share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. And basically, I went back. I didn't create slides from scratch, but I went back to a presentation that myself and Martin did together on crash data. And I kind of pulled some of his slides because I thought they were really good. And so I want to go through some of these points that are kind of the key takeaways from our crash data that the city has. And folks, as you're watching this, feel free to chime in the chat section if you're tuning in with your comments or your questions. And then folks who are on the call, we can just discuss as we desire to. But average of 29 pedestrian crashes and 52 bicycle crashes per year in Flagstaff. And so that's the first point. 29 pedestrian and 52 bicycle crashes per year. And there's all sorts of barriers to like how this data is like calculated. Like it has to be between a pedestrian and a car, or a cyclist in a car, and there needs to be a minimum of like $1,000 in damage to the vehicle or to the bicycle for it to be counted. And it can't be on private property, or I think, on people's residences. So this data is pretty limited in scope as to what it's reflecting, but nonetheless, it's the data we have. So that's on an annual basis right there. On average, 7.6 pedestrian crashes and 6.1 crashes result in serious injury or death per year. For pedestrian crashes, this represents 26% of crashes. Half of all traffic fatalities in Flagstaff are pedestrians. Okay. And then no bicycle fatalities in Flagstaff from 2012 to 2019. And then in 2019, there were two. Or there was one in 2019 and two in 2021. That's the first slide I have for you. Let me see if I can switch to the next one. Okay, let's see if that came through. Yep, nearly half of cyclists involved in crashes are between the ages of 18 and 24. To me, this means, and especially when you overlay this with the crash data, the maps, these are students, right? These are students going to NAU, and they're trying to commute to and from NAU, whether it's for shopping purposes or going out to a restaurant or to an event in town or to get to and from school. Maybe they live off campus, right? And so the fact that nearly half of cyclists involved in crashes are between the ages of 18 and 24 years old is very telling, in my opinion. More than 2/3 of pedestrian and almost three quarters of cyclists are males. Okay, so 3/4 cyclists, 2/3 pedestrians are males. So predominantly males are getting caught up in these crashes, in these collisions, and getting in these situations. Milton Road. Is someone trying to chime in?
Oh, I was going to ask a question.
Yeah.
Is the fact that 3/4 and 2/3 are male, is that reflective of some kind of large gender divide and who tends to commute by bicycle or cycle around the most?
Gosh, that's a great question. I'm guessing it's reflective of the national data, but I don't know, so I don't want to speak to that too confidently.
From what I've read in a few locations, it is just for the U.S. at least, the fact that ladies have maybe some different clothing and commuting needs. But it's and then the ease of cycling kind of the easier it gets, the more women participate, and then so vice versa, like the harder or the more difficult it's perceived to do, then the less women participate.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Is there also a potential intersection with the time that these accidents are happening?
Ooh.
Are a majority of these accidents happening later in the evening or night when maybe some women would not feel comfortable biking by themselves?
Well, check out that last bullet point. 40% of pedestrian crashes occur in darkness. So at least the pedestrian portion, which makes up, I think, a little bit over half of the total crashes, are at night or in darkness. So visibility is a critical part of safety, both in design of roadways and infrastructure, along with, just in general between cyclists and pedestrians and drivers. So proper lights, wearing bright colors, not wearing dark colors as I do, but I think lights make a big difference as well. Okay.
Oh, I just thought of another potential
Yeah.
intersection. I have no clue if this is actually correct, so someone feel free to chime in. But I suspect that young males are more likely to take risky behaviors like riding without a helmet.
Lauren, I feel like I can say yes, but Lauren, do you have any research to back that up?
I think most of what I read, they didn't necessarily go into behavior risk, but or risky behavior, but it was mostly just that men tend to bicycle, and there's just like if you bike in Europe, I mean, you can ride a bike in a skirt, you can ride a bike in a jacket, you don't get sweaty because there aren't really any hills. So it seems like just more men ride in general. But there's a lot of correlations, and it's really difficult to get a causation.
Okay, we can just file that away as wild speculation.
There's probably data on it, and we should follow up on this, and we'll circle back to that maybe a little bit later. Nate, can you hear us, and are you able to unmute and say hi?
Hi. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, welcome.
I was having some connection issues.
No worries at all. Do you want to introduce yourself very quickly and just share why you're attending this meeting?
Yeah, I'm Nate Spangler. I am a FALA student, most closely affiliated with FALA's Environmental Coalition, though I work with a number of other groups around town. I'm here because, well, first of all, this seems like a very important part of preventing climate change, specifically for Flagstaff. It seems like a very important environmental pursuit. I'm also here because I am a cyclist myself, at least when the weather permits, and it is very clearly in my personal self-interest to see advances made in pedestrian safety and ease of cycling around town.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for being here, Nate, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Nate, feel free to pop off with comments and questions throughout the presentation and discussions. It's very free-flowing event, and obviously Kathy as well. Just feel free to jump in as you decide to. But we're just going through some slides with information about some of the findings from the city's crash data. So on this slide, the significant findings are continued here, and it says for pedestrian crashes, fault was 34% pedestrian and 66% driver, versus for bicyclists, the fault was 44% on the bicyclist and 56% on the driver. And this is, again, local crash data, but only for those that met a certain threshold of criteria, right? So again, this isn't representative of all the crash data, but the crash data that resulted in more of a significant injury or cost of repair. So that's interesting. Does anyone have any comments or questions about that?
And is fault determined from the police report?
Oh, that's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. I would assume so, but I'm not certain.
I think it is. I remember when I first read this report, there's a little bit about how they did the data, and police reports are part of how it's collected.
Yeah.
The next slide says, or the next bullet point reads, about 2/3 of pedestrians and crossings. I'm guessing it's trying to say that 2/3 of pedestrian crashes occur while crossing the road, and so whether that's at an intersection or in the middle of the road, I'm not sure, but I think we know that all pedestrians, or many pedestrians and many cyclists, cross the road wherever it is most convenient and the most direct way to cross. They don't always walk to the intersection. That's just kind of, I think, human behavior. And then the last point is 40% of drivers in bicycle crashes are making a right turn. And this is going to come back into the discussion a little bit later when we talk about protected intersections. But nearly 40%, so a little bit under half of bicycle crashes are credited to right turning cars colliding with cyclists. And so that's, I think, noteworthy for us to consider, right?
That matches with research I've seen before that the majority of crashes happen at intersections. Although I've also read, and someone else feel free to chime in, that those are the crashes that tend to be the less deadly because the vehicle is slower at the intersection. Like in the case of making a right turn, they've had to slow down, at least they should have slowed down a bit in order to make the turn.
Right. Exactly. I think you're right.
Unless it's a semi-truck.
Sure. But I agree. But at the slower speeds, it does give the driver more of an opportunity to react and respond and stop, rather than at the higher speeds where fatality or severe injury is more of a guarantee, right? Okay, so this next slide, Lauren, I kind of kept this in here for you and others too. I need to pull these links and put them in the description of this live stream, but this is good information that we can look to learn more from about collisions and crash data around the nation, and I believe even locally through these two websites.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And then here's a slide that shows the hierarchy routes around Flagstaff. So this is a map of Flagstaff, right? And the dark blue line are like the top priority routes. And as you can tell, it's basically north to south, east to west. And those are the high priority routes. So from the discussion that I pulled this from, Martin at the city was talking about how these are the top routes around the city, and these are the routes that we take extra precaution around in terms of maintenance, in terms of planning, in terms of design, to prioritize bike and ped comfort and movement, because these are the top travel routes that we know of. So the purple one being the second tier of top travel routes. And so I think, we can kind of merge the two tiers together a bit and just say that all of what you see here highlighted are routes of which we need to really protect and enhance and improve upon and create, holistic networks to allow for, alternative modes of travel. So like, when I was on council, I was trying to get that loop that goes down Beaver and up San Fran, but down Beaver to Butler, out to 4th Street, and then around and, up 4th Street, and then down and around Lockett and Cedar, heading over the hill, and create like that closed circuit loop through protected routes and separated infrastructure. And just to give some context, so the bike pilot that you see on Beaver and Butler, that was to cover 2 of the 9 miles that were missing, and then the other 7 were to be addressed in the years to come. And we were supposed to learn from that initial pilot and take our learnings and apply it to the rest of the 7. And so there was like a 2-step approach. We got stuck at step 1. Doesn't seem like much is happening, but we'll circle back to that later in the conversation as well. So let's see. I think that might have been my last slide that I pulled, but now I want to share with you all something else. And any questions about that, by the way?
What time frame does that data set run through?
It's a great question, and that's actually on our next slide. You're one step ahead of us. It's great. Okay, so I think this is it. And as you can see, so this is the active transportation master plan. And let me see if I can improve how you can see it. Let's see if I'm able to somehow, maybe I can. Does that help? Can you all see that?
Yeah, good one.
Okay. So this is the active transportation master plan, and it's a city document, planning document, and it was approved and adopted last year by the council, and it took, I think, 8 years in the making to get it to this point. And so I went ahead to the introduction on the section on crash data. And as you can see right here in the introduction, it speaks to that this data has been collected over a 10-year period. So Tyler, to your point, 2009 to 2018.
Okay, so it doesn't capture any data for the period where like the Butler protected bike lanes were in.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
And I highly doubt that any one small project is going to really impact the data holistically, because you still need to be riding along, sketchy areas before and after the pilot, right? So we don't have any like closed quality networks yet that Martin speaks to, like bikeways is what they're called. And it's like, north to south bikeways that, you can get all the way to Fort Tuthill on this, Brown Line trail, or east to west. We don't have anything like that yet. And until we do, I don't think our data is really going to reflect the improvements. But at the same time, if we know we have a very dangerous intersection, which we're about to talk about, we can improve that intersection and we can reduce crash data dramatically, upon implementation, right? So I think, I think that there are ways of which projects will result in a dramatic shift in the data, right? So let's see. I wanted to point out here that, okay, so a lot of this was actually in the slides I spoke about, but these are just the introductory pages of the crash data. And okay, so here we go. This is the definition I wanted to share with you. I'm not too sure. I think you can see me highlighting it. Yeah, you can. So this is where it talks about that it needs to be between a pedestrian or a cyclist and a motor vehicle, right? And then it also says that the incident resulted in injury or death of any person involved in the incident, damage to property in excess of $1,000, or insurance of a citation by law enforcement to one or more of the parties involved in the incident. So these are like the qualifications of which the data needs to be, checked off on before it even reaches this document. And that occurs in the public right of way. So it talks about what's not included, and there's quite a bit that's not included, and that's a problem, right? There's a lot of information missing from this, but yet we can still, learn from the data. Here it talks about crashes and why the word crashes are used versus the accident. Accident implies that it was a mistake, versus crashes is saying that this is something that happened and that there's responsibility to this crash, and it's something we can do something about. And so the politically correct term to use is crash rather than accident. And then it speaks to a bunch of other points about the data here. I'm going to scroll ahead to a couple of things that I want to really show you. Feel free to stop me if anyone has any comments or questions. Okay.
Well, and I think one important distinction is that an intersection isn't just signalized intersections, right? It's anywhere there's a driveway, or it's more like I've heard them referenced as like crossings,
Yes.
and conflict points and stuff. But yeah, I know when I was initially digging into all this, I was like, oh, intersections like Milton and or like the signalized ones, but it's anywhere where there's a driveway, and I thought that was a big step.
Yeah. I think it's any basically crossing point between vehicles, and yeah, I hear you. That's interesting. That's an interesting point. So here's a chart that shows the crashes by year for pedestrians, and then here's the crash data for the cyclists by year. And I don't know why there's a drop off and why the numbers are the way they are. So don't ask me. I just don't have any insight in terms of why these numbers are the way they are. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's one reason I'd be really interested to see more recent data, because I know at least in larger cities where this data is collected more often, there's actually a fairly steep increase in pedestrian and cyclist fatalities throughout COVID. And I think afterwards, like I know I was just looking at LA data. LA has hit like a decades-long high in pedestrian and cyclist fatalities. I'm just curious to see if any of those larger trends are reflected in Flagstaff.
And that's an interesting point, because fatalities and crashes are two different things, right? I mean, they're kind of one and the same in a way, but a higher rate of fatality to me means that cars are traveling faster and that they're colliding and crashing with bikes and pedestrians more often. So I don't know if that's because less people are on the roads, or that more roads are being built that are wider. I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure what the root cause is.
Well, I don't know specifically for pedestrian cyclists, but I do know that motorist deaths went up during COVID because there were actually less cars on the road, which ironically led to people driving faster. And of course, speed is very tightly correlated with fatalities.
That was exactly the point I was trying to make too. So I wonder if that's the same logic here for what you're saying in terms of that rise in crashes or fatalities. So check out this chart right here. This is this is an interesting graphic that shows you almost like a heat map of where the crashes are occurring for pedestrians. And so if we zoom in, we can see, obviously Milton, being one of our most dangerous corridors, has a lot of crashes, especially at this intersection right here. That's pretty bright red. I think that's the intersection going to like the Plaza Way area with the Safeway and that whole complex. I'm pretty sure. And so that's a pretty bad intersection. And then you can see Butler and San Fran. Butler and Beaver are both hot spots. And then downtown has quite a significant hot spot. Looks like maybe at San Fran and 66 and different parts of downtown. So that's a concern. And then if we head over to the east side, you'll see Sunnyside along 4th Street has a significant amount of crashes. And then up at 4th and Lockett, there's also a good amount of crashes that occur at that intersection. And then over at Lockett and West Street, right? So for this is again for pedestrians. And if we scroll down, this I believe is for cyclists. Yep, it's for bikes. And interesting to see the similarities, but also the differences, right? So again, Milton is a hot spot. Basically, this whole kind of line around campus. Again, it's a lot of these students that are getting caught up in these more significant crashes. And that's just so devastating to me. So Butler, 2 real hot spots right there at Beaver and at San Fran. Downtown again, heading over this way. I think this is the Ponderosa intersection, if I'm not mistaken, on Butler. And then again up 4th Street. What are your thoughts on both of these graphics?
Driveways and intersections everywhere.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to see how many of those are sidewalk riders, because that is the #1 failure mode, especially counterflow.
Other people, Teo, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going over crash data. So what you're looking at, Teo, is the crash data for cyclists. But Teo, you want to introduce yourself really quick and say hi?
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late. Actually, I got here at 5 and I was ready to go, but it took me a while to find the link to join. It's my first meeting here. I live downtown at 112 North Aztec Street, right across the street from Adam. So thanks for letting me in.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, we're looking at the crash data for the city. And so again, this is the bicycle map. And you'll see Milton and Butler and 6th and 4th Street are all pretty significant hotspots. What else do people think?
It's possible that I missed something earlier in the meeting, but I'm curious if there's an explanation for that hotspot right in the middle of downtown.
Was that Nate?
Yeah.
Awesome. Nate, good question. You're talking about that downtown spot. I think if you think about the movement of pedestrians and cyclists, obviously, thinking about campus and knowing that the demographic age range is 18 to 24 primarily that are getting caught up in a lot of these crashes. It's folks heading, across towards Safeway, across Milton, and then also heading north. And there's probably just a lot of downtown pedestrian movement, right? Any given day, hour, and so I don't know if there's any specific data in regards to like if it's right-hand turns or what it is specifically, but it's a problem, right? So yeah, I know I didn't really answer your question.
Well, it looks like that's the intersection with Route 66. So like where you go from the nice what is that, Route 66 sidewalk urban trail section to getting into downtown with parallel parked cars, well, and tourists, right?
Totally.
If I could comment too, because I ride on Route 66 towards Thorpe Park every day on my way home from work, and a new intersection which I find really to be hazardous is where Humphreys and Route 66 intersect. There's a light and there are 2 right turn lanes and 1 left turn lane if you're heading south. And as I get the walk sign to proceed west on Route 66 towards Milton, the underpass, people are coming down Humphreys and many times not even stopping and just turning right if there's no oncoming traffic. But if there's a bike in the crosswalk or a pedestrian, it's very difficult to feel safe crossing there.
And is there a crossing there if you're trying to head? Are you talking about like north to south crossing or east to west crossing?
East to west, like heading
Okay.
west towards the city hall.
Yep,
And I
yep,
ride
yep.
on the sidewalk, so I can't ride legally on the sidewalk before that point, but I usually cross in the crosswalk and then join the traffic on the sidewalk rather than in the bike lane. And it's just folks coming down there, and some people just don't even stop. They're just like in their right turn mode without even legally stopping at the red light.
Right, right. And Taylor, you missed earlier, but in the crash data that we were talking about, a lot of crashes occur at those intersections due to right turns.
Yeah.
I think it was close to 40%, if I'm not mistaken. But those right turns are extremely dangerous, and you'll see with protected intersections how that is being addressed, because that is one of the key points.
So the right turn on a red, which I think was innovated when I was a young driver and was quite new back then, I think it's a problem because people, they're supposed to legally stop at the red light before they turn right if it's clear. But this is kind of a relatively recent thing too, because it used to be a single right turn lane and a single left turn lane, but now it's like a highway. So you have two lanes to turn right onto Route 66 at the red light, one left lane to turn. So there's just a lot of congestion and movement. But when people want to make that right and they see that there's no oncoming traffic, I feel many times they don't see the pedestrian or the cyclist that's trying to cross in the crosswalk.
Totally.
And the reason is because the vehicle in the left turn lane obscures their view of oncoming pedestrians from the left. So they come down. If somebody's waiting to make a left turn in the left turn lane to head east, that vehicle will block the view of the oncoming cars wanting to turn right. So they don't even see me until I'm basically halfway across the street.
Right, right. That's so, yeah, that's a great point, Teo. And again, shortly here, we'll see how protected intersections address all these points. But you're absolutely right. Check out this map. I think this is the last one I'm going to show on this topic from this report. This map shows pedestrian crashes by injury severity. So the green X is a fatality. The dark red is serious. The red is minor. Then the lighter salmon color is possible, and then none is that light salmon color. So pedestrian fatalities, I'm thinking this is over the last 10 years, 2008 to 2019, basically, are pretty scattered all over town, but primarily along those hierarchy routes, right? So Route 66, Butler, 4th Street, Lockett, downtown, and yeah. What are your thoughts on this slide? If any, no pressure.
I mean, definitely speed and intersections again. Those are the main themes. And then, so I just did a backtracking to right turn on red. When they came about in the 70s, they did a study in the early 80s and found that across multiple states, the increases in crashes were up to 107% increase for pedestrian accidents and 123% for bicycle accidents.
Wow.
And that's from way back when. So yeah, it's really this whole right turn on red thing. I mean, we all know that nobody stops at the crosswalk. They all pull through, right? They'll pull out, and then they keep going. But
and it seems like at times they're aggressive. Drivers can be aggressive about it. From the data, like as we know, people are people, and if they're going to be an aggressive rider, they're likely going to be an aggressive driver, and vice versa, right? So I feel like often I'm almost like trying to aggressively claim my crosswalk space as a cyclist, while a driver is almost aggressively trying to like get me to halt and give them the right of way when we both have the green light at the same time. And I'm like, no, I'm taking it, and you're gonna have to hit me, you know, if you're gonna try to overrule me, you know. But I'm not the majority, you know. I'm not that like concerned population, you know, or a younger person who, you know,
Well,
is yeah,
and another one is just they're not even looking in the crosswalk. They're
right,
concerned with the cars, so they're looking in
right.
the car travel lane or the wider travel lane, so they don't. It's like the have you seen the video where there's folks passing a basketball and they say if you notice the moonwalking bear? I'll try to
No,
post that because that one's
okay.
perfect.
So check this part out. Go ahead. Does someone else want to jump in?
No, I just wanted to say the other right on a green that I'm finding really is dangerous is I'm coming down Schweitzer, and then I'm wanting to get across Route 66 to get on the Flagstaff Urban Trail System. So there's a light there. It's a T junction, and I wait for the light to turn green and the walk sign to turn on, and I'm proceeding across the street to get on the foots. And people who want to make a right onto Route 66 are like, you know, what are you doing here? Why are you in my way? You know, and I've almost been hit there several times. You know, fortunately, people are stopped generally, and then they're trying to start off and make their right turn because it is a red light. But you know, you try to get out there in the crosswalk and hope everybody going on Route 66 in both directions actually stops at the stoplight because the speeds are high. So I found that to be a really scary intersection more and more.
Mm. Yep. There's plenty, right? There's no shortage of sketchy intersections around Flagstaff. So looking at this map, do folks see that that's 4th Street? If you look at that fatality that occurred near 66 and 4th, and then you go north and you get to that other intersection of which, you know, there's there's a library, there's a public library, there's a few schools, right? I want to say you have the what is it called? Pine Forest. You have, I think MEMS is right there. You have Thomas down the street. So at that intersection is where the city's planning to build a roundabout. And I don't mean to get us on a big tangent about these roundabouts, but they're doing it because there's a lot of crashes that occur here. But the data that they're looking at is crashes between cars, not really crashes with pedestrians or cyclists or kids, right? But car crashes. And so they're justifying the intersection design of which is a roundabout. And roundabouts are great, but roundabouts are very clearly used to prioritize the movement of car travel. That's what roundabouts are doing. And so I have concerns. You know, I think that the staff agreed to put in safety crossings that like have the lights and stuff so that kids don't have to negotiate who has the right of way to the crosswalk with cars that don't have a stoplight, you know, which just freaks me out. But Lauren puts in the comment. Lauren, do you want to go ahead and voice your comment for us?
Oh, it's the link to the video that just highlights that folks really don't see what they're not looking for. And
That's great.
they're definitely not looking for us, right? It's the larger cars, and I mean it's a common thing for motorcyclists too.
Thank you for sharing that. So anyways, that's the crash data, and that's just for pedestrians, right? Let's take a quick look at the cyclist, and then we're going to move on to another topic shortly here. Okay, so green, again, the green is fatal, and then the dark is the more serious, and the lighter is the less serious. So check out this map. So not as many fatalities, but yet still many crashes that occur all around town. Any comments or questions about this or any of this? So that's the crash data, folks. That's kind of what I had to share with y'all.
I wanted to say, based on my experience here, when the two new tunnels get completed, which I think is about to happen soon, I'm hoping that that's going to relieve a lot of this data that you're showing. Actually, when we can basically move north-south and not have to spend time sort of on Milton and Route 66 necessarily, but
Right.
move from side streets, neighborhood
Right.
streets, under the tracks. I think that's going to help a lot. I hope it does. We've been waiting for that for 30 years.
Right, right. Yeah. If folks weren't familiar, there's I think actually going to be 3 underpasses built in to the downtown mile corridor is what they're calling it. And so you'll have a pedestrian, and it's only for pedestrians and cyclists. So you have the ability to go under the tracks by La Plaza Vieja, just west of downtown. You'll have the ability to go from the city hall to the parking lot where the downtown connection center for Mountain Line is with the buses. And you'll also have the ability to go under the path or under the railway a little bit further east on the east side of downtown. I don't know exactly where, but on the eastern part of downtown. So that will help a lot. It will. But yet, it doesn't mean our roads are less dangerous. It'll just mean that people will have more options to travel, right?
One last comment, Adam. I never used to ride on the sidewalks, quite frankly, because I had an attitude that I should be able to use the streets. But after being hit by a car last year, and I know it's not legal everywhere in town, but in most places you can ride legally on the sidewalks. I'm really trying to use the sidewalks as well as the foots wherever I can to just avoid being in the street with vehicles, because I just feel like they're moving too fast. They don't see me. And, my biggest fear is not only just getting hit again, but being killed. So
Right.
I'm riding on the sidewalks, and I'm not proud to say that because the pedestrians don't always appreciate us, but it seems to be, the curb is at least some barrier against disaster.
Right. Right. It's definitely the safest place. But, yeah.
I would, if we could dig into the data for that, because that is a really strong safety feeling. But a few studies have shown that, well, the highest failure mode is counterflow on a sidewalk. But yeah, if we could, maybe that's a topic for another day. But yeah, just be really careful at intersections.
And Lauren, speaking of that, I know you were doing some digging on this topic too, with your research and your findings, and feel free if you'd like to share any of it in terms of like sharing your screen. But if you want, you can just speak to it if there's anything you'd like to point out in terms of, the research you did and how it complements what we found here locally.
Nice. I think our local statistics are pretty well mirrored across the national statistics. I mean, all of the data collection, everybody has the same limitations of what was actually reported and what data is available type of thing. But yeah, we're pretty consistent across the board. I think what I really found interesting, just from the crash data report, that when intersections, driveways, and interchanges were all combined, that accounted for 70% of bicycle crashes.
Wow.
And then 50% of those are at uncontrolled, let's call them crossings. So a half of those are at non-signalized locations. So and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's all about where cars and cyclists overlap.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if we could get rid of 7 first, well, and this is all crashes with motor vehicles, like the largest chunk of bicycle crashes is not with any other motorist, or how they're reported. It's falling over from debris and road conditions. So that's the largest chunk. And then once you get into just the ones that are related to motorist interaction, and just 70% are at crossings. And then 50% of those are at non-signalized crossing, or uncontrolled, is what we call it.
Okay,
it's really
that's interesting.
those driveways are really, I mean, it's the pull out, left cross, right hook, right. It's the top three.
Interesting. Okay, folks, are you all down with me changing gears and talking and showing a little video about protected intersections?
Go for it.
I'll take silence as a yes.
Yeah.
So I think, a lot of the comments that were brought up about safety and whatnot, you'll see are addressed in the design of a safety intersection or a protected intersection. And so I like to start by just showing you this page. This is just if you Google protected intersection and click on images, you'll see the design basically in many different ways. And the simplest one is just kind of this one I find. Let me see if I can open it up. Oh, you know what? It's not. Let me see if I can make it more visible. Maybe I'll zoom in on it. It'll probably really distort the image, but you'll get the idea. Can you all see that decently?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, good enough. So you'll see that the curbs are bumped out. So tail into the other comments that were made about the right-hand turn. Do you notice how the car is set back? And can you see my pointer?
Yeah.
Okay, so the car is set back here. You see that? And so they don't have the right on red. They can't make a right on red. They're set back, and the pedestrian and the cyclist basically can walk or ride all the way to this corner right here. And this little piece right here is a piece of concrete. So that the car, when they do make a right turn, has to make a really sharp 90-degree angle turn. Okay? So very similar design to a normal intersection, but slightly different, right? And so for one, again, the pedestrian and the cyclist are way ahead of the car. So they're way more visible for one. And then they have what is called lead signalized intersections. So they get the green light first that allows them to cross over the street, often giving them enough time to totally cross the intersection before the car has even made their right-hand turn. And that's just amazing, right? And if the pedestrian or the cyclist needs to make a right turn, they just follow the path and they're good to go. And I mean, those are kind of the key things about protected intersections. I like to now show a quick video. Any questions about that before I show the video?
Well, I just want to say that I had the opportunity a couple times to ride in Vienna, Austria, where they have like completely separate segregated pedestrians and bikes from the traffic, and the staggered lighting was huge. To be able to get 2 or 3 seconds to jump out and take your space before the cars and the trucks get their green light.
Right.
That was a huge advancement in terms of feeling safe.
Right. And you're being prioritized, and it really delays the driver by a handful of seconds. It's not, it's like 5 seconds is all that the prioritization is. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. That's great. So this is a video. Hopefully the sound will come through. We'll find out momentarily. This is from the town of Ottawa, Canada. And Ottawa's really taken charge in improving their networks and their intersections. And you'll hear in the video, but they're putting in 20 to 40 of these intersections all across their city and their town. And they get a good amount of snow every year too. And so I think we can really learn a lot from Ottawa and follow their lead. But let me know if the sound comes through, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and play
Why do
this.
intersections matter for cyclists?
Could you guys hear that?
Yep, you're good.
I could hear
Okay,
it.
wonderful. Okay, so we're gonna just watch this for a few minutes.
So from a safety perspective, intersections are are basically overrepresented in terms of cycling collisions. More people get hit and more people get killed riding bikes at intersections than anywhere else. So when we design intersections, we really need to think about them from a cycling perspective and what kind of conflicts occur. One of the most common ones is called the right hook collision. This is when a right turning motorist hits a through moving cyclist, and quite often that's because the motorist didn't even see the cyclist. They might have been in the passenger side mirror, but the motorist didn't look, or the cyclist might even be in the blind spot. That happens a lot with trucks. Another common one is the left hook, when a left turning car doesn't see a throughbound cyclist. And then when you have something like a two-way bike path, these conflicts get way, way more complicated and really need to be taken into account.
What have you seen in terms of Ottawa's big plans for protected bike intersections?
So Ottawa is one of the first big cities to have started experimenting with these kind of intersections, which makes it a really great place to live to see this kind of stuff happening. So as far as I'm aware, the city started building these like 4 years ago, and since then they've built almost 20 at different points across the city. So from a North American perspective, Ottawa is actually the leader. They've got a pretty strong lead over, I think, Fremont, California is the second one. And you can see that if you look at some of the examples the city's built, they're constantly kind of improving, trying new things. They have experimented with different techniques for winter maintenance, for accessibility, how to place bike signals. So just from a ride around Ottawa, you can see a lot of really cool examples of this kind of stuff.
What makes a protected bike intersection functional, safe, and comfortable?
So there's a few really neat elements about protected intersections that work. The first one is that when you stop on a red, you can see the stop bar for cyclists is way up ahead of the stop bar for vehicles. That makes them super visible. So when the light goes green, the cyclist gets to go in the intersection first, and that benefit extends to pedestrians as well. The other next one is the setback. So the crossride is actually set back a little bit from the motor vehicle lanes, and that means when a driver is turning, they have a bit more time to react and see a cyclist, and they get closer to 90 degrees to the cyclist, which makes them more visible through the windshield and the passenger mirror. And then the third great thing about protected intersections is when you want to turn left, you actually never have to cross any lanes of traffic. You get to go straight through and make what's called a two-stage crossing. You wait at the stop bar, you wait for the light to turn green in the next direction, and you go straight through. Right turns are even easier. You approach, and you can go straight through the corner without even having to wait for the signal at all, as long as you yield to pedestrians, of course.
How did Ottawa start getting serious about intersections?
So city staff deserve a ton of credit on this one. It's been really interesting. I work as a consultant, so I work with the city staff a lot, and there's been a lot of really passionate people behind that here, pushing for change, pushing for experimentation. And because Ottawa started building these so early, a few years ago now, they've had a chance to already kind of learn what works and learn what doesn't work. And they have now about 17 built, but they have dozens in the design process. So in the next decade, Ottawa is really going to go on the map in terms of cycling infrastructure. Entire corridors are going to be rebuilt with these protected intersections. And the city's just released a protected intersection design guide that leverages a lot of that knowledge. They're still learning how to do things like designing for winter maintenance. Ottawa gets 3 meters of snow every year, but if Ottawa can do it, surely anywhere can do it with that much snow. So big kudos to the city for doing everything that they're doing here and continuously improving.
A big thanks to Matt for showing us around and helping us appreciate Ottawa's progress here. He also explained some other features the city is implementing in these new intersections, like more advanced signal phasing for cars.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause it there. That is the video that speaks to protected intersections. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you all is the city's plan for a protected intersection. So it's kind of tying this whole conversation to this point that we're making that is leading into the upcoming budget retreat in a week and a half from today that we're organizing for, right? And so let me show you what the city's planning for, and then we'll discuss a bit about all of this. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Okay. So check this out. This is part of a recent capital projects update that the city gave to the city council and to us, the public. And this is for a protected intersection at the corner of Butler and Beaver, and also Butler and San Francisco. It's in the design phase, and it's only at 15% design, as mentioned down here. But that's enough to give us a pretty good understanding as to how this would work, how much this would cost, and what the next steps are. So in these images, you don't really see what the improvements would be. These are just images of the two intersections. But the big takeaway here is that the cost is about $793,770, so about $800,000 each for both intersections, for each intersection. And this is something that we are going to be advocating for funding by the council at the upcoming capital budget retreat, again, a week from this Friday. And as we saw in the data, these are two of the more dangerous intersections for cyclists and pedestrians, right? So can you imagine all the information you just learned about protected intersections being placed here and how that's going to impact the crash data? Talking about the right turns, the left turns, etc., the lead signalized timing. You know, the city spends hundreds of millions of dollars almost like annually, maybe closer to 100 every year on, like, you know, infrastructure projects. It might even be a little bit less than that, but it's a significant amount every year that we invest tens of millions of dollars in infrastructure projects. These collectively will be about 1.6 million, right? For the two of them. Is that a worthwhile investment? You know, is that something the city should pursue? That's kind of what's up to be discussed at the upcoming budget retreat. So what are your thoughts? That's protected intersections. That's the crash data. And so it seems like protected intersections are really, you know, the future and what we need to see Flagstaff embrace and become a leader with, right?
Has any discussion been made on saying no right turn on red in the meantime?
That's a great question, and I think the answer is no. I don't know for sure, but the tension that exists at the city on these topics is complicated. You know, you have a culture at the city that has traditionally placed the needs of the car first and said, okay, we are not slowing down cars at any cost. We're going to prioritize their needs, and we're not going to take responsibility for the crashes that occur. You know, they just the pros outweigh the cons of moving cars faster. You know, so it hasn't necessarily occurred voluntarily, and I don't necessarily think that the city on their own accord with their own leadership are going to start taking steps backwards to that degree without, you know, public engagement and push and support. So the beautiful thing about these protected intersection designs is it forces the conversation, because it says these designs are clearly stating that you don't let the car turn right on red, etc. And so by design, we're addressing the core issue and hoping that that radiates throughout the department and at the city, and then is, you know, implemented in all sorts of other ways, right?
Yeah, it's really great that you have that insight. Those are the doers, right? Yeah. We're just the cyclists going, why? Obviously, this is the great way to do it. Yeah. Just don't let people turn right. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for
It's
that perspective.
you know, there's a huge battle happening right now internally at the city with NAH, the hospital, and ADOT, and the new plans and the road construction for the new NAH facility that's going to be out by Fort Tuthill, the new hospital. And my understanding is ADOT is requesting and demanding in ways that we build out the intersections to 2045 modeling projected needs for travel, which means 6, 7, 8 lanes of traffic on each leg of the intersection. And that's a huge intersection. That's like 4th and 66, but even larger. And that's a problem, in my opinion. That's a real significant problem. So we'll circle back to that later when we need to engage as the public with that. But who else has a comment or a question? Kathy, I'm gonna pick on you if you're still with us. Love to hear your thoughts. I know we've been talking about a lot of different things.
I was thinking about, too bad we couldn't show them that film about Ottawa and drive home the point of it being better for tourism if there was just bikes and pedestrians downtown, at least in the downtown area.
That's a great point, and I think that's going to be a big selling point as we continue, is to make that argument that this is good for tourism and good for economic development, because I think on its own merits it just doesn't do the trick. But when you start pulling in tourism and tourism dollars, that you can get somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think was thinking of ways to approach it or try to change.
That's a great idea.
Have they seen the studies that show greater economic spending and all that when cars aren't prioritized?
So it's so funny, a lot of people assume the council is briefed on everything, and the council is briefed on a very lot of information every week, but we don't really go into the details of the crash data or like the details to that extent of impacts on local businesses, etc. It just isn't brought up for whatever reason, often time and not having enough time to really get into the weeds on everything. And so that's kind of on the homework of the council members, is on their own accord to meet with experts, meet with staff, meet with community members, and dive into these things. But not many do. Not many council members, elected officials in general, dive into the weeds on all these topics. This is too much in the city to worry about. So it's kind of on us, right, to educate, to reach out to council, to speak at public comments, and share information with them directly, so that they have the information they need, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, I am remembering one meeting where it was a little disappointing, the comments, because there was one lady, one woman, she presented on along with Martin. I think she was with the like Safe Streets group or Vision Zero.
Really?
And I know I'll have to find my notes, but she was lovely. I'm sure she has. I mean, that's like the backbone, or that's pretty common in all of those arguments too. So maybe she could be an ally.
Yeah, that's interesting. What else? What else do people want to share or think? Nate, do you have any thoughts about all of what you were just presented on, and intersections and whatnot?
It's certainly exciting, but I don't. It's also kind of disappointing because I don't see that coming to Flagstaff very soon.
So we're so close, right? Like, so here's the positive thing: is there is momentum and there is efforts happening at the city, and this next Friday, again, not this Friday, but a week from this Friday, April 7th, is a huge opportunity that we have as the public to weigh into the conversation and express a desire for the city to find the funding that they have internally and allocate the funding for these two intersections that we're designing currently. We funded the design effort, but we don't have funding for the projects. But yet we find millions of dollars. The city budget's $500 million, and it's complicated, and some of that money is tied up in different things. But there is funding within the transportation budget that could be identified and utilized for this if there was a desire by leadership and by staff. I do believe that this could be done, and this could be budgeted. But that's again where we come in, right?
Could you expand on how influential public commentary is on elected officials?
Yeah, it's a hit or miss, but I've seen one person completely influence the discussion and the decision, and I've seen 100 people fall short of doing any kind of influence as well. So you kind of have to know where council is at and know if they're like sympathetic to these things, open to these things. And I'll tell you that the majority of council definitely is sympathetic and open to these things. And I believe if we get a decent amount of people to engage. So here's the plan for next week, and this is going towards the last thing. Gosh, my camera battery keeps dying. That's so funny. I'm struggling with my camera batteries, but okay, I'm going to switch it while I'm going to keep talking. But basically, next week on Tuesday, the 4th, we have a call to action to get people to come to the council meeting at 3 p.m. and speak and give comments to these topics that we're talking about and more. And then on Wednesday, we're hosting a bike ride, where we're going to go and visit the locations of these efforts, of the projects that we're discussing on bikes. And we're going to discuss together what that design looks like and what that means, right, for our community. And then on Friday, that's the budget retreat, and those of us who can attend will attend. But I think hoping that people have enough opportunities to engage in the process. I'm hoping people come on Tuesday. I'm hoping people send emails. And maybe just a handful of people come on Friday that can afford the time, because it's going to be, throughout the day. So that's our game plan for next week. And could use anyone's help in getting the word out and promoting it. And then lastly, I'm working on a letter of support that people can share and kind of, make their own and send to council to give you some framework for how to phrase these things and what it is that we're asking for. But I do think we will be successful, and I do think that we will get some of these projects funded.
So Adam, what time will you be at the Tuesday meeting then, right? Is it 3:00?
Yeah, public comments right at 3. So we're just going to be there and get out. It'll just be right at the beginning. And I'll give you a quick overview of what we're advocating for. There's funding for 3 different projects. The 2 intersections that we just talked about. And let me let my dog out. But then there's also the elevation of the Butler bike pilot. So elevating that to the height of the curb and making it a 10-foot foots trail on both sides of the street is another project that we're going to be advocating for. And then the other thing that we're advocating for is for, I believe, 3 positions of support to work with our city planner for multimodal, Martin Ince, and give him more of a team. So it's not just him doing all the work. So those are the things that we're advocating for in our comments and our engagement. Obviously, people can choose to comment to all those things or none of those things or whatever they want, but that's the greater call to action.
Speaking of Martin, has there been any more progress or movement in terms of the city advertising for additional coordinator positions like he's been in for years?
Starts with funding and funding allocation. And so that's, again, next Friday. That's why next Friday is so important, because if council does not allocate the funding in the budget, we're just talking about it. But at least if they do fund it, we can talk about it and implement it because we have the funding allocated. But it's difficult to get funding at the city. But I think that we have enough momentum, to Lauren's point, that I think the public engagement will be successful. Lauren, I see you're commenting a bit. You want to speak to what you're posting?
I'm using our chat as a catch-all for visuals.
Oh, nice.
So it goes back to that, like, where motorists are looking at different speeds. I mean, the for safety speed is just number
that's
one.
a good one.
Right? Yeah.
Is that the
I think I really
second one, or
say it again.
was it the first link or the second link?
I really like the first link because they put in a picture of actual people, but the visuals that they've used in NACTO and the FMCSA or whatever, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they usually use like computer generated little stick figures, and that's not as impactful. So I don't know. I feel like visuals when speaking to folks it's a lot more impactful. Yeah, in trying to get the point across. But I mean, from your explanation, Teo, I mean, the drivers aren't even looking for you on the side coming from the left or the right.
I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. When I first moved to Flagstaff 42 years ago, I was exclusively a road rider, and I'd been living in Michigan growing up, riding on residential and country roads. And within 6 months, I sold my road bike when I moved to Flagstaff because there were no shoulders. There were big trucks everywhere, logging trucks. The foots didn't even exist. And I got into mountain biking in 1982 because that seemed like the only way to survive. But
wow,
at my age now, I mean, I mostly commute. I shop, I go to work, I'm riding all over town, and I've never felt less safe in my life. And when I was hit by a car and told by my doctors, okay, you can't ride for like 8 weeks, you got to heal up. So I became a pedestrian. And I was telling Adam, I felt less safe as a pedestrian than I ever had as a cyclist, you know, because I had to walk across the street at a, pedestrian pace. So I don't know. I mean, this safe streets for all, I'm all for it, but I've been riding a bike since 1966, and I feel less safe today than I ever have, even as a kid on a small wheel bike. I mean, it seems like it's just getting worse. And I posted. I don't know if everyone can see it or not, or it was just maybe just to Kathy, but there was recently a BBC podcast specifically on why are so many people dying on American roads. And the trend over the past 20 years is just up and up and up, and not just cyclists or pedestrians, but everybody. And I don't know. I tell Adam, it's like I just don't feel safe leaving my house anymore, which is incredible.
Right. So on a positive note, another insider piece of information I can share with you all. Metro Plan is our regional planning agency in town and organization, and basically they got a grant for $400,000 recently to pursue a safety restudy in town. And simultaneously, the previous council, of which I was a part of at the city, we said that we want to become a Vision Zero town, which is all about having 0 deaths on our roads. And so it's taking ownership of the data, the crash data, and it's taking charge and creating a plan as to how to address that situation, right? So very big deal, a lot of public engagement. So that's all yet to come. And it's not cheap, right? It costs money to do this, but it helps get us additional grant funding and allows us to do some really good stuff in town that will help all of our stories that we talk about in terms of safety struggles. And so Metro Plan got the funding to help us with that research and get us going, which is incredible. And then from that funding and that data that we're going to find, we can then help to take that research and put it towards a grant application for different projects in town, and projects costing in the area of like $8 to $10 million. So we can do some significant work with this, and that's all in the pipeline right now. Teo, was that you commenting? So
if you're speaking to me, I didn't say anything.
Now at least where I'm at.
Say that one more time, Teo. Teo, can you hear us? Okay, I'm not too sure what's happening there.
I could hear a little bit of what you were saying, Adam. You were breaking up. Yeah.
Okay, I was just asking you to say that again, whatever it was you were saying.
I was commenting simply that while you were talking, it was broken. It was really hard to understand what you were saying.
Okay. Basically, MetroPlan got a grant to do safety work in town, and that can lead to more grant money, and that's really good. So that's happening right now.
Okay, I heard that. Thank you.
Good. So, folks, it's almost 6:30. I want to wrap this up for us. That's our conversation today. Big takeaways are that next week we have a lot scheduled. Tuesday is our big call to action, trying to get folks to come out to council and speak to some of these points and ask for funding allocation at the upcoming budget retreat. Wednesday, we have our bike strike ride from 5 to 7 p.m. We're meeting at Heritage Square, and then we're going to ride around and go to some of these project sites and discuss them. And then Friday is the retreat itself. And we're asking people to email and show up and engage in public comments throughout the whole week, really. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments about next week? There's currently a Facebook event for the bike strike on Wednesday, and we're trying to build momentum around that event and also empower people to show up on Tuesday and Friday through that event. So invite people to that event, share it on Facebook, let people know, and let's show up next week. But does anyone have any comments about how to get the word out, or anything about all the things we have planned next week?
Adam, did you
Yeah.
say when's the best time? Like, if you wanted to email the council, would that be Friday?
Before Friday, for sure, because Friday is going to be crazy busy for council members, and at that point, it's almost too late.
Oh,
But I'd say, emails coming in anywhere between Monday to Thursday of next week is ideal.
okay, thanks.
And Kathy, do you have any ideas as to how to get the word out there, or get more people to engage?
Just tell everybody you know, I guess, and your friends and family.
Maybe we can get all of Fala to show up and engage.
At the bike strike, you're thinking?
Bike strike, but really, I mean, all of the efforts are trying to build momentum to get people to show up and speak up at the council meeting. At the end of the day, that's the ultimate goal. So sending an email and also speaking on Tuesday, coming to the bike strike, and just engaging with council.
Yeah, with comment both on Tuesday and then at the budget retreat on Friday. Our school schedule is pretty poorly placed for public comment, and under different circumstances, we might be able to organize a field trip. But just today, we had a field trip to the NEU teach-in, so we're kind of running out of points to do that. But yeah, definitely spread the word. Try to get people they know to go, or send emails. It's definitely something we can do.
I'd say at least emails would be really helpful, and that does go a long way. That's great. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments in regards to how to make next week as successful as possible?
Well, the weather looks like it's on our side anyway, so that should help.
That's good. That's good. We'll take it. Well, very good. Tyler, do you have any closing comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll definitely be writing an email, and yeah, look forward to the events coming up.
Great. Anybody else have any closing comments before I let you all go for the evening?
I just thank you, Adam, for convening this, and I'll do what I can to try to get more participation on my front. But yeah, it's all you can do is to get the word out and hope people show up. And like I said, with some decent weather, maybe we'll have a nice turnout.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll try to get that mock email to you all by this Friday at the latest. I'm working on it currently, and then we can spread that out to our friends and our networks and ask, as Kathy said, everyone we know to engage. And again, they can engage via email. They can show up on Tuesday. They can come on Wednesday for the ride, but that's more for fun than for engaging. And then, email council leading into Friday or show up on Friday. But I know that most people won't be able to do that. But big week next week. And if we get the word out and get people engaging, there's a good chance we'll be successful with funding for some of these projects and building the team up at the city, and that the ripple effect of that will be tremendous over the years to come. So exciting opportunity we have, an exciting window we have of opportunity, but we got to act now, or we might miss this opportunity. So
hey, Adam,
yeah.
one question for you, and again, this is Teo. On the group ride, are we just on our own, or will there be police involved? The last group ride I was involved in, someone was killed.
Yeah, I think we're gonna reach out to the police and have them help chauffeur us. Yes. Would people on this call feel more comfortable with a police escort?
Or just some sort of police presence. I mean, if it's a large group, we almost have to have it. If it's a small group and we're stopping and having, meetings and discussing things at certain locations, I don't know. It's just an idea. Like I said, the last ride that I did, which I think most people are aware of, we were just, a large group riding around, and turned out very badly. But, I've been on group rides with the city around Bike to Work Week and things where the police are involved, and
Right.
it definitely adds a safety component to a bunch of cyclists riding around town.
Right. Yeah. No, I appreciate that reminder. I'll reach out to the police department and we'll likely have an escort.
Or
I think that's
even
a good
Adam,
idea.
if it was a cop on a bike, or a couple of
Oh,
cops on
interesting.
bikes, I mean, that would be perfect. I think unless it's a really large group, and then you need more. But I'd just say
Sure.
police presence would be what I would suggest.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Very good. Any other closing comments from folks on this call before we wrap it up? All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Kathy, thanks for joining our effort. Not too sure when this group will convene next, likely in a couple of weeks. But next week is going to be a lot, again, with 3 different events. So try to join us for 1, 2, all 3 of those events and help us get the word out. And let's go get that money. Let's go get that money and let's continue to improve the safety conditions in Flagstaff for our kids, for our members, for everybody, for all, right? But the council needs our support and we need to advocate. So I appreciate you all. Kathy, do you have anything else to add before we say goodbye?
No, I think it's been really informative, and
good.
Thanks.
Very good.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Adam.
Thank you.